Thanks, everybody. My name is Cara Maesano, and I work at RMI, which is a nonprofit. It's traditionally been focused on the energy transition. It's been around for about 40 years. And what makes RMI different from other environmental nonprofits is that it's quite focused on industry transformation. So we have several activities focused on CDR at RMI, and I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview because I think people are often confused by what we do. We're not an academic research team, and we're not a startup. We're not a buyer. We're not. It's all very confusing. So I'm just going to give a quick example. We do some research, not direct research. But RMI has this model of think, do, and scale, which is slightly cringy, but it kind of works. So on the think side, we do a lot of technology assessments and road mapping, including a geochemical CDR roadmap, which is up there. On the do side, we try to make things happen. So part of that, we have a startup accelerator called Third Derivative, and they work with startups to try to get them plugged into industry and help accelerate their progress. We also have a direct air capture hub, which we are starting a feasibility study for, and that's the only one, I think, that's focused on mineralized storage. And then RMI also has a carbon markets team, and they're looking to build out a platform for transparent data sharing within carbon markets. But we also have a policy team, and we have people working on market shaping more broadly. Just to give an overview, what I'm going to focus today on is the technology assessment side, and specifically for geochemical CDR and enhanced weathering. So I said that RMI has this model of think, do, and scale, but what does that mean? That could mean quite a lot of things. If we think about getting to scale, how do we get a specific pathway to scale, or how do we get, like, for example, all of geochemical CDR to scale? We've tried to separate out different elements of that. So there's the demand side, there's the supply chain side, which we've heard talks about today. It's quite challenging, even though the whole planet is full of this material. Technical readiness, social license, human capital. Like, do we have enough people to work on this? And I think right now we don't. It's really hard to hire a geochemist right now. And that's just for technical expertise. But we're going to need a lot of people working on this in general. And then, do we have the infrastructure to get everything going? I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to focus on the technical readiness part of this. One of the things my team has done is produce a roadmap for it's pretty much focused on advancing research and development across all of CDR. We split into 32 different CDR categories, and terrestrial enhanced weathering is one of those. The audience for this, just quickly, is for researchers and entrepreneurs, but mostly for government funders and anybody in a position to fund research. And our goal with this was to offer an independent perspective on what is it that we need to do in order to enhance, or sorry, to accelerate each of these different pathways. So here's a picture of the front of it. So, and like I said, the goal is really to identify the funding gaps and then to get them filled. So we've identified critical path projects, which I'll get to in a minute, and looked at how much is being funded through startups, how much research is being funded just directly, usual channels to universities and national labs, what government funding is available, and what is this? We're based in the US, so we looked a lot at what's going on in the US. And then we tried to identify different projects and activities that should be funded so that funding agencies know where to put their money when they're trying to determine which projects will have the most impact. And so, like I said, we've identified a bunch of projects which are shown on the next slide, but the timeline for getting a lot of these implemented is quite long. There's a lot of tests that need to be done. And so the point here is that we need to start funding these projects now. They need to be funded now in order to get going, in order to have results and to be able to build and scale before it gets too late. So this was published in our roadmap, and I tried to summarize it because it's quite a dense slide in the roadmap. And I see that Google Slides didn't like my PowerPoint version very much. What we've done is looked at what are the research projects that need to be done now in order to get to larger demonstration project scales, and how much money should be put into those projects across the board. So what we've come up with, and this is very high level here, but what we've come up with is that globally we need at least $50 to $100 million in R&D, basic R&D funding, to get enough projects done so that we can advance. And I'm sorry I left the stage gates off of the slide just because it was so crowded. Now this is very subjective, obviously, because we don't actually know how much money we're going to need to do this, but we wanted to give an indication so that funding agencies, specifically ones in the US, but others that have quite a lot of money to spend on this right now before the next election, can do so. And then we've also identified some path boosting activities. So what else, aside from getting research projects and demonstration projects going, like what else can be done that will boost the whole field, and how much money should we be putting into those? And then, like I said, the idea is to advance these approaches and get them to technical viability and commercial scale. And we know that some are at commercial scale now. However, there's still a lot of research questions being done. A lot of research is being done by startups, which is also making things complicated as well. So across the board, I'm showing this because this is a talk on scaling enhanced weathering. This was our best estimate of how much CDR we can actually get to across the board, by looking at where we are today and then trying to be realistic about growth rates and pushing that out to 2100. Geochemical CDR is the green. And one of the reasons why I wanted to show this is because so my role and my team is to focus on the geochemical side of things. And I was quite shocked at how small this is, because I think we all believe that there's more than enough alkaline material in the world to do quite a lot of CDR. But the reason why it's so small is because there are these other challenges. There are supply chain challenges, there are measurement challenges, and then just growth rates in general. Like, new industries don't usually grow that quickly. I mean, there's a sort of a historical limit, and we haven't seen any evidence yet that we can get beyond that historical limit. So we tried to be conservative, but also optimistic at the same time. So yeah, we landed here, which shows that there are lots of other ways to do CDR that might happen at a larger scale. Now, I'm hoping that when we redo this in 2 years, that we see something different, but that depends on a lot of your work. Yeah. So how do we get there? How do we get to scale? You know, there's a lot going on, I think, in the research space. There's some activity on the policy side, and then there's some activity on the market side. And there are a lot of people thinking about how do we increase demand? How do we get people to pay for this in order to spur demand and get more things to happen? I think enhanced weathering, if I understand correctly, and Laura in the back can confirm or deny this, is that there is a demand problem for, you know, within the voluntary carbon market for CDR. I think except for enhanced weathering, right? Like I think people, from what I understand, people are actually interested, if they're willing to buy CDR, they're actually interested in enhanced weathering. I think that's a good sign. But there's still a lot of open questions, and there's a lot of open questions on, do we really want to fund this through voluntary carbon markets or compliance markets? Or does this take the form of government procurement or pay for practice or a number of other ways to get this covered? Because, you know, the voluntary carbon market, first of all, is voluntary. So we shouldn't rely on that as a climate solution. And then also there's a lot that needs to be done, and the scale, I still don't think that, I'm speaking for myself, but I think this is true in general. I still don't think we really understand the scales involved here. Like, we can say we need gigatons and gigatons, but that's, to actually do that is a lot. So we're going to have to find a lot of ways to cover this. And then, yeah, I think we're going to have to also find a lot of ways to find supply of materials. We're going to have to optimize those things. So I thought I'd conclude with some requests for the research community, because I know a lot of people are here. One thing that's, enhanced weathering is moving so quickly that it's really, which is awesome, it's great. But it's really hard to keep up. So I have a request for more reviews, actually, but consolidated, because when people come to me and ask me about, like, is metal leaching really a problem, or is crop yield increase really a thing? Like, I'm trying to go through a million different papers, and it's quite time consuming and difficult. But sometimes these are policymakers asking these questions, and they don't have a lot of time, and they don't have a lot of bandwidth, and so their attention span for this topic is not always that big. So it would be great to have answers to these things, you know, on hand, and it's hard to keep up. Meta studies, if I understand correctly, some of these have been done, but I haven't seen any. So that would also be great. And then the other thing is, it would be nice to see everything published, like everything you're doing, even negative results, because those are important too. And I know in science, I'm not actively doing science, but I was a scientist for a very long time. And I know it's hard to publish negative results, but it would be very helpful. And then, you know, there are other ways to publish information and get information out there. So yeah, it'd be great to learn more about everything that's going on. Thank you.